A few days ago, the video game news outlet Kotaku released an article titled "The Human Toll of Fallout 76's Disastrous Launch," allegedly detailing reports of mismanagement and mistreatment of staff members from former ZeniMax developers who worked for the company during the creation of Fallout 76. I use the word allegedly for a very specific reason, one that we will talk about later in the video. But first, I want to look at the accusations that the article actually puts forward. The article details accounts given by 10 former employees of Bethesda and its parent company ZeniMax during the creation of Fallout 76, shortly after the launch of Fallout 4 in 2015, and leading up to its launch date of November 14, 2018. For the sake of anonymity, none of the developers' names were listed, citing that ZeniMax can be quite litigious when it comes to their legal team, fearing career-shaping repercussions should their names go public in an article such as this. One such class of the development team that the article focuses on first and foremost are quality and assurance testers, who are typically contracted workers whose job it is to playtest the game in search of bugs, exploits, and other in-game issues. According to the article, these testers were allegedly commonly subjected to crunch, a practice of game studios putting cohesive pressure or mandatory requirements on working extremely long hours during the course of game development. The article specifically detailing an average of 10 to 16 hours, 6 days a week during crunch time. Many of you may remember back in 2018, Rockstar Games was also accused of subjecting its development team to game crunch while working on Red Dead Redemption 2, leading to a strong backlash of negative press that would ripple out to other studios with common practices. In the larger picture, the article goes on to detail several instances of workplace mismanagement of staff and mistreatment of employees. I won't go into extensive details about the entire article, mainly because I want people to read the article for themselves and form their own opinion, not just rely on my take, but I also want to talk about this article and what it means for the Fallout franchise and for Bethesda as a company. As I said, I'm going to summarize and build what I believe to be an accurate and detailed timeline of how events played out according to the article. If I missed any details that you think were important to include, their lack of inclusion is more for the sake of brevity, not dismissal of their validity. Following the rebounded success of The Elder Scrolls Online post-launch, and further supported by the success of Fallout Shelter post-launch, higher-ups at ZeniMax Studios became more and more interested in the monetary potential of live service games. Fallout Shelter alone grossing about $100 million in its first 4 years post-launch. Seeing the financial viability of such projects, higher-ups at the parent company started pushing management at Bethesda's main Rockville, Maryland office to begin development on another live service Fallout game, one similar to Fallout 4. While it is alleged that many senior development members voiced their concern over Fallout becoming an online game, the project was set into motion regardless. I want to pause here and note that I do think it is quite interesting that senior game developers had disagreements with making an online Fallout game, as before the launch of Fallout 76, an online Fallout game was probably one of the most desired concepts fans were hoping for. But I digress. With the newly opened Battlecry Studio, now Bethesda Austin, in 2012 still in their back pocket, ZeniMax assigned the still fledgling development studio to begin working on this new online Fallout game, putting senior management such as Todd Howard in charge of overseeing its development. The production was negatively impacted by a few key factors right away. First and foremost of which was the fact that Bethesda Austin had little to no experience working on live service games. This uphill creation process was made harder due to the fact that the studio insisted on using the creation engine in order to save on time, money, and the retraining it would have taken to get their senior developers acquainted with a new game engine. It should be noted that while the creation engine was used to create Skyrim and Fallout 4 prior to Fallout 76, its predecessor, the Gamebryo engine, was used to create Elder Scrolls Oblivion, Fallout 3, and Fallout New Vegas. The two engines share many similar underlying aspects, though the creation engine more refined and advanced in its output capability. Another detriment to the project's success was the fact that Bethesda prides itself on development size efficiency, being able to create massively popular games, Skyrim and Fallout 4 being made with only about 100 people at the same time. They believed that they would be able to do so again with this project. There's also the question of Todd Howard's involvement with the project, and this is where things get to be a little bit more speculative on my end. According to the article, Todd Howard was credited as an executive producer on the Fallout 76 project. While this does indicate that Howard had a high status among the team, his actual involvement or willingness to do so is speculative. The article states that Howard wasn't very involved over the course of the project, spending more of his time working on Starfield than 76, which many of you may know is a game that Howard has wanted to make for a very long time and is one of his top priorities at the company. It is also rumored that Todd Howard may actually be looking to exit the industry following the completion and release of Starfield. While it is not something I can confirm or deny one way or the other, the theory would be that Howard's mindset with Fallout 76 was something along the lines of, well, it's my last 2 weeks anyway. This does not excuse Howard's lack of leadership in this position, however, regardless of whether he was assigned to the project or chose to lead it himself, but it may explain his lack of care as detailed in the article. Food for thought. Focusing back on the article, we basically have ZeniMax pushing for Bethesda to make an online Fallout game, the task of which is assigned to a studio that has little to no experience working on such a game, using a game engine that is known to be very rigid and has a very small development team, with leadership that, for lack of a better term, seemed uninterested in the project as a whole. Not just Todd Howard, but potentially other seasoned leadership that didn't want to work on the project in the first place. This, coupled with ZeniMax's set-in-stone release date of November 2018, practically meant that the project was kneecapped from the start, resulting in multiple instances of mismanagement and mistreatment of its employees. While to me this sounds like a top-down issue that stems from ZeniMax's eagerness to break into the live service gaming sphere, it clearly shows major mismanagement issues with Bethesda's game studio development structure, issues that need to be addressed. As while mostly different, it still ranks itself up there with recent development mistreatment, as we've seen from Rockstar and Blizzard Activision, the latter now currently a game studio under Microsoft's umbrella. While Microsoft in the past has said that they prefer to be very offhand with their development studios, it will be interesting to see if they make any changes when it comes to the guidance and standards with its studios. Only time will tell. Now, I want to briefly mention that I use the word allegedly for a very specific reason. According to posts that I've seen on Twitter, sources that claim to either have been involved with the development of Fallout 76 or more knowledgeable about the development of Fallout 76 in one form or another have claimed that parts of the article may be inaccurate, and while not 100% wrong, are not 100% right either. At this junction, I do not feel comfortable saying any of this is set in stone, and I feel that you shouldn't either. I am comfortable, however, in taking the majority of this article at face value, as mistreatment of game studio employees isn't something unique to Bethesda, so we can at least assume that there is some kind of mismanagement going on at the studio, or at least was. As for the Fallout community, what does this change? Ever since the release of Fallout 76, people have been pointing out both the positive and negatives of the game. Bugs, exploits, a lack of NPCs, all issues that were allegedly raised during development, I might add, and this article adds more weight to those kinds of criticisms. I personally have never been afraid to point out the positives of the game, such as the enhanced lighting effects, draw distance, RPG mechanics, or the evolving UI when given the opportunity. At the same time, though, I have always been very mindful of good faith and fair criticism of the game. At launch, it was an empty, boring map. There was fun to be had for sure, but nothing engaging in the long term. In the 4 years it's been out, aside from the Wastelanders update, the game for the most part remained the same. Season boards are okay, and the seasonal events like Meat Week and the new Invaders from Beyond events are pretty fun in their own regards, but big things like the Mothman Equinox or the greatly anticipated Expeditions, where we go back to the pit from Fallout 3, are being met with a meh kind of response. With everything detailed in this article and the years of content release and controversy that this game has received, it's difficult to not look at this game for what myself and many others have known it to be from the get-go: a cash grab. With all that said though, and to leave the video on a more positive note, one thing that absolutely cannot be denied is the fact that even though this game is a buggy mess that was only ever meant to bring cash to ZeniMax and Bethesda's coffers, there's one silver lining. Through intention or accident, Fallout 76 has spawned one of the most positive, creative, and welcoming communities gaming has ever seen. Hundreds of thousands of people have enjoyed and still greatly enjoy playing the game, both solo and with friends. are eager to help new players find their footing and introduce them to the wider gaming franchise's history and lore, and has given dozens, if not hundreds of people the means and inspiration to create, be creative, and express themselves in amazing ways. Taking the refuse and garbage that is the finished product of Fallout 76 and forging it into something original and new, something that many Wasteland Wanderers are all too adept at doing. To me, I think that might be worth all the crap that fans have had to put up with from this game and from Bethesda over the last few years. It is also for this outcome that I hope the developers who had to deal with the mistreatment can find some positivity in the outcome. While the war of quality with Bethesda may seem like an unwinnable fight, it is always important to take a moment to look around at what the community has managed to build from the destruction, building anew upon the mistakes of the past. Because as we in the Fallout community know all too well, war never changes.